Hi friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. It's that time again. We're ready for another instalment of reading through the alphabet. So today we're going to be doing D through F. So let's make a start with the first book. You know the drill by now if you saw episode 1. If you missed it, then I'll try and remember to leave a link down below. I'm going to try and put them all into a playlist anyway, and you can always go back on my channel to find it. But the book we are beginning with is Do No Harm. So let's make a start. I have quite a positive review for this book. I felt it was a fast-paced, gripping plot that I thought was hard to put down. We're following 3 female characters' point of views. They are Dr. Anna Jones, a renowned heart surgeon, Margot, who works with her but not as high up at the hospital, and finally Detective Inspector Rachel Connerty. At its core, this is a gripping thriller about a surgeon blackmailed to go against her nature and instincts and kill a specific patient. However, when you dig a bit deeper, it is also a story about motherhood in various forms. Focusing on each of our female main characters' point of views, but from different situations and perspectives, I felt really added to the story. So, Dr. Anna Jones is a mother to a young son called Zach. Zach gets taken by a drug gang and she is threatened to kill an MP during his heart surgery. Otherwise, they will kill Zach. Now, not only does she have to commit the crime, but also get away with it, which isn't easy since the gang have set up cameras to watch her every move and tapped her phones and even resort to following her at times. She gets suspended whilst the hospital look into the patient's death to discover the cause, and the police are also breathing down her neck as D.I. Connerty believes she is lying about her son's whereabouts and is covering something up. Now, moving on to D.I. Connerty, we begin in her point of view, discovering a murder has occurred to Anna's neighbour, and she is trying to solve it and discover what has occurred. So, initially I was wondering what the different point of views had to do with each other, and how their stories would intertwine and come together in the end. My initial thoughts on the ending and how the characters became involved with each other were mostly wrong, but I was happy with the outcome and the ending, mostly. D.I. Connerty starts to spiral and unravel throughout the book, just like Anna and Margot too, actually. However, Anna and Margot spiralling is due to the high-stakes, unethical pressure situation, whereas D.I. Connerty spirals more so due to grief and loss. Anyway, she becomes obsessed with theories of Anna and Zach, bordering on harassment. Now, since I want to try to avoid spoilers as much as possible, I won't go into that too much. Finally, that leaves Margot. Margot is someone who didn't grow up with much in the best family environment, and she even now struggles to get by. She is stealing from all of her colleagues and is eventually found out and therefore fired. She takes a pregnancy test which turns out to be positive, so she then realises she's not only looking out for herself but also another life. When all these women and their situations end up intermingling and coming together, intricate webs of lies are woven and even more blackmail ensues. I found it so interesting the perspective that this story was told in, as our main focus, Anna, is not only a surgeon, sworn and determined to do all she can to preserve and save lives, but she's also a mother. This choice made the story more impactful, as whilst Anna's character could have been a man, and Zach's father, who would have loved him to no end too, I felt that it packed more of a punch being centred around a mother's love. I believe that this way it shows that there is nothing like a mother's love, and just how deep that bond goes. Now, obviously, I'm not a mother, so therefore cannot speak from personal experience, and can only assume. I expect that a mother's love could run slightly deeper and further than a father's, since they develop their bond, care and connection to the child sooner as they bear and carry the child and get their maternal instincts that much sooner. Anyway, as I say, I thoroughly enjoyed my reading experience with this book. Overall, I'm rating it a 4 stars as it was action-packed and full of twists and manipulation and deceit. I just don't think that this is one of those books that will ever stick with me forever. However, over time, if I keep thinking of it fondly, then there is potential for me to up the rating. But that is where it is currently sitting for me at this present moment, and I would definitely recommend it. So, now that we have finished Do No Harm, we're moving on to our book beginning with E, which is actually going to be Emma by Jane Austen. I'm not really sure how to feel about this book, and therefore what to say about it. I tend to struggle with the writing style of classics, which then unintentionally impacts my thoughts and feelings towards the book. In this book, we're following our main character, Emma Woodhouse, who is a 20-year-old heiress who lives with her widowed father at their estate Hartfield. She is beautiful and wealthy and has no financial incentive to marry. She's very nosy and a bit of a busybody who is always poking her nose into other people's romantic affairs. She's also rather critical and judgmental of others, especially those of a lower social standing than herself, who she often looks down on. She has many hobbies such as art and music, but often never finishes or chooses to excel at any of them. I can relate to that, although I'm trying to get better at finishing pieces and not having lots half finished. I could relate to the fact that she's never been in love and doesn't think that she ever wants to be married. All she needs are her interests. If she gets bored of one, then she will resume the other. So this book was published in 1815, the last of Jane Austen's novels to be published before her death. It takes a lighter and more comedic tone than her other works, as we mainly focus on Emma's meddling. Unlike most of Emma's friends and the other young women around her, she doesn't need to marry because she doesn't need a husband to supply her with a fortune, as she's already wealthy enough herself. Her beauty and cleverness is thought wasted on their small village of Highbury. Emma does, however, take pride in her matchmaking skills and sets about bringing together her governess, Miss Taylor, and Mr. Weston, who is the wealthy owner of the nearby estate of Randalls, who go on to be married. Emma is then lonely once Miss Taylor is gone, and so moves on to adopt orphaned Harriet Smith as her new protégée. Then a lot of complicated relationship messes occur. This then leads to a final conclusion where the book ends with 3 marriages in total between Robert Martin and Harriet, Frank Churchill and Jane Fairfax, and then Emma and Mr. Knightley. I will skip all of the intricacies in between because that's quite a lot to comprehend and go through, and I want to keep this review fairly brief and spoiler free. So I really struggled to comprehend what was going on at times, as I generally find classics not as easy to follow due to the writing style anyway. Therefore I didn't always know what was going on. Some of it was a bit confusing with all the crossover of feelings, etc., and the similar names and things like that overcomplicated it a bit for me, personally. I did watch a recap after finishing the book to get a clearer understanding of what happened, and I did feel that that helped quite a lot and solidified some of the things which I thought happened. Overall, I think that a lot of the views and relationship criteria in this book are very old-fashioned and outdated, which is to be expected due to when this book was published and how much time has passed since. So it feels too overly critical to just say I mean, it's not objectively bad, it's just it was written in a different time period that suited that time period more, and things have changed since. Not many of the characters were very likeable, and I just didn't personally like or agree with some aspects of it. However, I'm so glad to finally be able to say that I have actually read this and finally got it off of my physical TBR, and it's another classic that I can tick off my list. In the end, I've landed on a 2.5 star rating for it, as it wasn't great in my opinion, but also not the worst, and I didn't DNF it. Objectively, it's not an awful book that you can't get through, it's just not my personal cup of tea, and that's fine. I would still recommend it if people wanted something along these lines. I will, however, be keeping the book even though my rating is so low, and I'm never going to read it again because the cover of my copy is beautiful and very me, and it will also remind me of my achievement in having finished this book. Now we've finished Emma, we're moving on to the third and final book of this video, so our book beginning with F, which I'm so excited for. I cannot wait to start this series. Flawless by Elsie Silver. Right off the bat in chapter 1 we are introduced to Rhett, who is the male main character, by revealing his hatred for milk, which seemed really random at first. However, it does factor into the plot of the story and it gets explained why later on. Also, I'm aware that that's not like a completely unheard of thing. I know quite a lot of people don't like milk. I just thought it was a really weird way to begin the story. He's very immature and irresponsible for a grown man though. Claimed he doesn't want a babysitter when he is assigned Summer, our female main character, to keep him out of trouble after he ruined his sponsorships and image. It was cute and gentlemanly that he got the doors for her at the start of chapter 6 though, without thinking, despite him not being pleased with the arrangement. I also enjoyed getting glimpses of the other characters and their family dinners, giving all the small town vibes, similar to the Knock 'Em Out series. Despite him being annoyed to have Summer shadowing him to keep him in check, he is attracted to her and keeps thinking about her. Likewise, he was her childhood crush, and so she is also obviously attracted to him. However, this did lead to the story feeling very lusty and a bit insta-lovey, even though they struggled to get along for a while. The gym scene in chapter 9 felt very full of sexual tension, but they were starting to get on and it was weirdly kind of sweet at the same time. I wasn't sure why Summer was suddenly acting like she was a personal trainer though, like she knows what exercises are beneficial for him and his pain, since I'm fairly sure she hasn't learned or been trained in any of it. We do briefly touch on it a bit later on in the book, but I was a bit confused by it at that point, as we're told that she went to law school, not medical school. Following that, later in chapter 11, she's giving him creams and medicines and massaging problem pain areas for him. I get it as a plot device to bring them together, but it just felt a bit too unrealistic to me. Anyway, I did enjoy a good amount of the banter in this book. Not only between our main characters, but the rest of the family too. Full of witty and funny responses and playful back and forths. Aside from all of the spice, which personally I'm not a massive fan of, it was a fun and enjoyable read, just not a personal favourite or super high rating for me. Rhett just wants attention, whether it's good or bad, from the people he cares about, after not getting much from his family for years, and especially since he knows that they disagree with and don't support his career choice. Meanwhile, Summer was groomed into a relationship with Rob, the doctor who helped her get better when she was younger. She is a people pleaser who wants a better relationship with her half-sister Winter, who as it turns out is now married to Rob and pregnant with his child, and her stepmum, and they ignore her due to the awkward circumstances of how she was conceived. She trusts Rhett enough to tell him about it all, but he ends up blurting it out in an intense moment, spilling her biggest secret. Things then blow up, the third act breakup ensues, and they are both super stubborn, so don't come back together easily. They are both attentive and notice things about each other, doing little acts of service for each other and treating each other with respect. The one thing in this book that I loved and was absolutely obsessed with was the found family. I know that will be my favourite part of the series as we go through each of the other books. In the end, I settled on a 4-star rating for this one. So there we have it, that is my final thoughts and reviews and ratings on these 3 books. I really hope you enjoyed this instalment of reading through the alphabet and that you liked my drawings. If you did, let me know your favourite one in the comments down below. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a like and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. And hopefully I'll see you in another video very soon.